Thanks. Is this on? Hey everybody, I'm John, I'm with UMA. We're decentralization maxis, so we were trying to use our optimistic oracle to solve a really big problem that DAOs have, which is that they're not particularly decentralized. There's kind of a missing step there where you wind up just having a multi-sig do everything at the end of a whole lot of voting on Snapshot. So this is live and deployed. I think the first thing to explain is what UMA is actually doing. So, hey, okay. So UMA is an optimistic oracle. So when a lot of people think about oracles, they're just thinking about price feeds and delivering data to DeFi, which is what Chainlink and some other oracles do. What UMA does is it allows you to assert any kind of truth on chain and allows anybody to dispute it. So instead of having a bunch of nodes try to verify some specific piece of data in advance, you allow anybody who knows some fact about the world to make that assertion, put some money behind it. If nobody disputes it within the challenge window, it can be accepted, and you can use that data and information to trigger some smart contract actions. So we describe it as a decentralized truth machine, and we've kind of geared our latest contracts to really fall around that pattern of asserting a truth, which can be natural language, by the way. So it could be like a sentence, like, you know, the weather's not going to go above 80 degrees in like Belgrade today, is something that you could assert. So it makes it really flexible and open-ended, and we'll talk about a couple of the use cases in addition to governance, which is the main focus here. Talked about that already. One thing that we didn't talk about is you actually have recourse for bad data. So sometimes you'll have some bad data like a manipulated market. That price data arguably is bad. You could say that the oracle worked correctly, but if it's clearly somebody that's just manipulating one big market to change the price of some token to attack some protocol, you could say that's not the real price. And that's something that you can actually dispute then within UMA that you can't really do if it's like an API-based thing where it's like, well, this is the only source of data and that source says this, so therefore that's the price. And it allows you to be a little bit more, oh, I'm not even clicking through. Sorry about that. Yeah, this one. Yeah, we're here. Okay, recourse to contracts. I was clicking through on my computer and forgot that it wasn't connected. So I'm talking about this last thing, so adding recourse to contracts. If some data is wrong, in some unanticipated way, maybe Binance's API got hacked and it's delivering bad data now. You know, a bunch of nodes technically verifying that data from the API can't necessarily catch that, but you could say like, this is clearly hacked, this is clearly wrong, none of the other exchanges agree with that, etc. UMA lets you dispute things for basically any reason, but you also have to put money behind your dispute, so you can't just arbitrarily dispute stuff. You have to dispute when you expect to actually win. So what goes into it? We talked about requesting some data, proposing some data, disputers that are watching it, and all of our proposals go to like one interface, and a lot of people have bots set up too because there's a monetary incentive to dispute. You get like a big chunk of the proposer's bond for disputing. So we do see disputes pretty regularly with Polymarket when there's some ambiguous wording about an outcome. And you have to have some kind of methodology of the truth. If you have some kind of complicated data that you need, like the Across Bridge uses UMA under the hood, and it's about like verifying a bundle of relay or refund data from a whole bunch of different chains and making sure that all the transactions are included, and it's highly technical, and that's very bot-driven. And economic guarantees that bound the cost of manipulating the system, which I'm happy to talk more about that after this talk if anybody's interested, but you basically want to have some kind of either use UMA's DVM, like all the UMA token holders coming in to vote to get the final answer, which is what Polymarket does. But if you were the Uniswap treasury or something, you might want to off-ramp and go to your on-chain governance if you were using OSNAP to control your treasury, just because the Uniswap treasury is so much larger than UMA's system. You want to make sure that you don't have an economic incentive to try to attack UMA's voting system. So these are some examples. These are all like live examples. Polymarket I talked about. Prediction markets are an obvious use case. You don't know in advance what markets you want to create. You want to have maximum flexibility. Insurance is another obvious one. So Sherlock and Cozy use us. And they do a lot of things like, was this protocol hacked? Which is not something you can technically verify, but you can basically know. So we did some payouts around the Euler hack for both of those protocols recently, actually. Across, I mentioned, extremely technical driven. It's all bots with that. Like humans are not manually proposing or disputing things within Across. It's bots that are watching all these different chains and seeing what's going on, proposing and disputing. Success tokens, this is kind of an interesting one. So you can do DeFi native VC fundraising on chain using UMA, where you basically lock up your native token. In the Shapeshift case, it was the Fox token, and you sell it to investors, and it basically has an embedded call option. And if the Fox token price is above some level at the expiry date in 2024, those VCs are getting the payout of that embedded call option. If it doesn't go past that level, you just get like 1-to-1 with the native token, and you just had this long lockup period and might have bought it at a bad price. And then this is a KPI option with QiDAO. Where because UMA is extremely flexible and it can verify truths in a natural language way, you can describe really custom KPIs and use that to incentivize your users instead of just saying, here's an airdrop, here's a bunch of tokens, I hope you want the same things I want. You could have your users only get paid out if the thing that you want actually happens. And you can see that success tokens are basically the same idea, but around price. All right, so let's talk about governance, though. So this is a big problem. We have DAOs that run on forum discussions and then snapshot votes, and that's great, and you might have hundreds of people participating, but then it just kind of drops off and you just have a multi-sig that controls everything anyway. And it kind of makes the first two things a little bit fake. It's also really inefficient. Like, it's not fun to be a multi-sig signer. So if you're on a multi-sig, you're constantly being asked to verify things. You're probably just like pushing it through like, oh, I trust this person, that transaction's probably fine. Massive legal and regulatory liabilities being a multi-sig signer, especially as a project gets bigger. So it's inefficient, it's insecure, it's not decentralized. UMA can help. So we basically built a tool called the Optimistic Governor that allows you to attach some rules to a safe. And transactions that follow those rules can go through. Transactions that don't follow those rules get disputed. And then we made it much more narrow and focused on the problem of relaying snapshot votes on-chain and executing them. So right now, once you add OSNAP, your DAO is now actually controlling it. Like, it's not the multi-sig that has to execute everything. Anyone can initiate some transactions that were approved on Snapshot. Anyone can dispute that too. Like, you can just look on Snapshot, see if it was approved, see if the transactions all match. And the truth is economically incentivized, and it's really easy to set up. We tried to make it really beginner friendly. It's all UI based. You can deploy this, it says in an afternoon, really, like, that's with reading all of the docs and trying to understand how UMA works and everything. If you're just clicking through the buttons, it's like 10 minutes. So it's gotten a lot of adoption in DeFi in particular. My theory for that is just that DeFi protocols do tend to be decentralization maxis, and they know that they have this problem, and they just feel deep in their heart that they need to change it. Plus, maybe like the regulatory thing of financial protocols are a little bit more hazardous to be a multi-sig signer. But really, it should also work really well for NFT projects, where you can use your NFTs for voting on Snapshot. Projects that have a really wide voter base that don't want to pay for gas. I think I was reading an article that Uniswap governance has cost over $3 million in gas so far. And it also became very concentrated for the same reason, because people don't want to pay gas, but they want to participate in governance, they delegate. And so now you've got concentrated voting power, and it's still costing a ton of money just for those delegates and like handful of really big voters to vote on chain. So OSNAP not only makes Snapshot execute, like, the combination of Snapshot and OSNAP means more people can participate, it's a lot cheaper, and it makes it more decentralized, especially if you're doing Ethereum mainnet governance where gas is super expensive. So this is the flow. I mean, it's like a pretty simple flow. The big part is just like understanding, the step of disputing and voting and so on. Like, you can pretty easily verify whether a snapshot vote passed or not, whether the transactions match. And actually, if there is a dispute, it's thrown away. You can repropose. You don't have to wait for the UMA voting system. You can push it through if somebody disputed by accident or something. And that's an area that we're iterating on too, because we want to maybe have some like off ramps where after a certain number of disputes, you go to on-chain voting as a fallback or something like that. But this is where it stands today. And we're just trying to go where people actually are. So a lot of DAOs use safes already. A lot of DAOs use Snapshot. OSNAP just fits in between. It's just like a plugin thing that you add and a small module that you deploy and attach to your safe. And then you have UMA's network verifying all of this. And by the way, since we have a lot of people watching the network for Polymarket and for Across and for all these other systems that are really highly active, that helps with security and monitoring. You get a lot of security and monitoring out of the box. A lot of these proposals have long challenge windows, like a day or more. Polymarket challenge windows are about 2 hours, and usually a dispute comes in within like 30 minutes if there's something obviously wrong, and that's just mostly somebody spotting it and just like thinking about it, double checking the wording and everything. So disputes come really fast. So your treasury is not only protected by your DAO watching or your multi-sig signers watching, you have the entire Ethereum ecosystem potentially watching and trying to earn some money by blocking bad proposals. So this is getting set up. I think that, are we able to share the slides at the end? There's like links and stuff. I mean, we have like the docs on this. Like it's a pretty easy set of steps. I'll walk through a couple of them that are maybe more interesting. You can set a custom bond. So you could say like, oh, this is 2 WETH to propose something, or this is 100 of our protocol's native token to propose something. And you can also set a custom challenge period. That's how long you have when a proposal is made to actually dispute it. So shorter challenge period means you can execute faster. Longer challenge period means more time to review. So the more conservative approach is a fairly long challenge period, especially because a lot of these protocols are using this to secure their native treasury, which would be a really big problem if that got hacked. You just attach it to your snapshot space with the SafeSnap plugin, which some of you might be familiar with. It's a very similar principle. A big difference is what's actually executing it. Instead of using the reality module, you're using the OSNAP module run with UMA. And a big advantage of that is just this monitoring network. You have a lot of validators watching UMA proposals, which you don't really get with reality. You have to bring your own monitoring with reality. And you can contact us then, and we'll tweet about it and do Twitter spaces with you and help to promote your integration, because we're excited. This is where it looks like, just literally circling it. You go to the Zodiac app in your Safe apps. So Zodiac lets you add all of these additional little modular things to your Safe. The OSNAP module is fairly easy to find. And then here are some rules, actually. So you can read through the rules. These rules are posted as a string on chain. So when a proposal is made to the Oracle, you can just go and like read these natural language rules as a human being and see whether or not the transactions follow those rules. You know, just go over to the snapshot space, check the transactions on chain. We're working to actually show the transaction details in the Oracle interface, just make it super, super easy. We're going to have some bots, too, that can automatically dispute obviously wrong ones. Like if you had a proposal that doesn't link to any set of transactions at all, or if the transactions clearly don't match, like that's an easy bot dispute that would automate the process and unfortunately outcompete human validators for the proposer's bond. So you could run that bot and try to run it more frequently than us and catch the bonds. Just a bunch of extra stuff. It's all audited. We get OpenZeppelin to audit all our stuff. You can set it up right now on Ethereum, Optimism, Arbitrum, Polygon, and Gurley. But if you're on some other EVM-compatible chain and you have a DAO that wants to use this, it's not that hard to deploy it there. We can deploy the UMA stack, and we can talk with the Zodiac folks and deploy that stack too. And Safe is probably already there. It's really beginner-friendly too, so you don't really need a lot of technical expertise. You can set up a Safe and Snapshot and OSNAP without doing any coding at all. And you also don't need to know how to code to validate that these things are correct. Like these are things that you sort of like eyeball. You can compare. You can like, you know, do like a diff on like the transaction bundle or something. You don't need to write your own scripts. And it lets anybody participate. You know, human readable rules make it more inclusive. You're not like looking at this inscrutable multi-sig transaction to try to understand what it's doing. You're just checking if it passed on Snapshot. All right, so then moving beyond voting systems and multi-sigs. So this is like a really easy set of rules to enforce, but you could add other rules like this address is allowed to spend 1,000 USDC a month because that's like the marketing person or something. And you just tack that onto your custom rules, and now you have like a self-service kind of payment thing. You don't have to have a vote every time that happens. And you also don't need to send it to another Safe. You don't need to give this person potentially multi-sig control. A lot of reasons, a lot of the people that use multi-sigs do it for efficiency, that it's just not efficient to go back to a vote every time. It's ridiculous. So you just trust the multi-sig signers with everything. This allows you to have customized limited trust where you can do this thing, and then this address can do this thing, and this address can do this thing, you know, within boundaries. And like none of the addresses can do this thing without a vote. And it lets you write custom rules that make sense for your DAO in a way that all of the members of your DAO can understand what the rules are. You're not writing a set of smart contracts that hopefully add technical checks to enforce the rules of the DAO. You just read what you wrote, and anybody can interpret them. And then this is a little bit outdated. We are like hiring. We hired a head of sales and marketing manager though, but one thing that's missing on this, we are looking for an UMA product manager. And there's a lot of cool stuff that's out of the scope of this talk around LLMs that we're starting to do, which I know that like AI and crypto is a meme, but the way that UMA works, being a natural language-based oracle, it actually fits really well. So there's a lot of interesting things that you could do around using LLMs to interpret and answer questions. I've been like back testing a lot of polymarket proposals to see if the LLM gets it right with like web search enabled. There's a lot of interesting stuff. And I think that it's relevant to OSNAP too. Like if you're writing these custom rules, you could get the LLM to check like, is this rule going to be enforceable? Is there anything ambiguous about this? It's going to be a really fun year on the product side. So if you are a product person, kind of experienced in this space or know somebody that would be interested in this, let me know. And we do have KPI options for referrals. I forget if this slide gets into it or not. But you'll get like an on-chain KPI option where if this person sticks around for a while or makes it to like this stage and this stage, you'll get a greater and greater payout. So find us somebody who is good at this, and we'll give you some tokens that'll do hopefully the max payout when they're there for a year. Yeah, that's all my slides. I know that was a lot. I guess we could go to questions.
Thanks for the mic. First of all, the most important question out there, I mean, like, is really UMA named after Uma Thurman, or?
No, it's not.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this is like, for our company offsite in Arizona last year, that like our designer made these shirts.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been advising some guys, you may know them, I don't know if you worked with them, like the Opium team. You've had the project when you've been actually providing as an oracle for SpaceX launch. And they've been doing, yeah. So I mean, so I looked at UMA more in a way is like providing feeds for like real life options or something like that. Obviously, now you're stressing more this DAO product, so to say. Is this just a result of some kind of more focus going in this way? You see not too many applications, say for the price feeds or like derivatives or something like this. What's your view on the general, so to say, market request for the oracles in general? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I think that we're responding to the product market fit that we're seeing around natural language stuff, like prediction markets and insurance, and then governance. These are not things you can do with the price feed oracle that easily. It is funny, internally, we spent like a few months and built a perpetual product, and then we were like, we just weren't happy with it for various reasons. Like the UX was bad, like we didn't like the way that like liquidations were happening with funding rates, and we decided not to move forward with the perpetual product and just like work on something that seemed like it could, you know, pick up more. I do think that the governance stuff is a really big problem, and we kind of calculate internally how well we're doing based on total value secured. And it's kind of a hack to increase that because DAO treasuries are so huge. So if you're like optimizing for that number, because that kind of indicates how much trust people are putting in your oracle. And it's really even greater than the amount stored in the safe, because if your DAO treasury gets hacked and like all those native tokens get drained, that's bad for you in a lot of other ways too. Like that could potentially kill your project. And it is just like a huge weak point in the overall ecosystem. Like multi-sigs are not the way that these things should be done. But you can still build options, and there are people that are building options on top of UMA right now, and we work with them. So it's not something that the Risk Labs team internally is doing, but you can definitely still build like options, and you know, success tokens and KPI options have gotten more traction just because they're like weird exotic ones that are also hard to do with the price feed. We've just kind of like avoided the price feed area because it's like a battleground in there, and just focus on stuff people can't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool, thanks.
Just one question before I ask the bigger question. So, if I understood correctly, when there's a proposal, and that's when the UMA dispute community jumps in and verifies that the proposal text matches what the transaction that's going to be executed on chain is going to do, right?
Yes, it can be verifying both. I mean, it can also just check that you didn't just like sneak in a proposal with some transactions that don't actually match the transactions were approved. Because on Snapshot, you're building the transactions, like you're literally voting on that transaction bundle. And really, we would like for like that to get caught at the snapshot stage. And that's kind of where LLMs could jump in, because LLMs could interpret, like combine the text and then give an opinion of whether the outcome of the transactions match what was in the text, and give a warning to the snapshot voters. And if the snapshot voters are still like, oh, but we like it anyway, like this is fine, then that's fine, and that's none of UMA's business. But yeah, we could dispute based on those reasons if there's a clear mismatch.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is like the Tornado Cash incident that happened a few weeks back.
Yeah.
That a malicious proposal, was passed, and the attacker was able to take all the governance tokens. So it's in this case, like it's up to the UMA dispute network to find the issue with like the discrepancy between the language and the actual transactions being executed, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we do want to have like more like bots that are able to do that, like assisting human validators. But yeah, human validators are kind of pouring through the transactions right now and comparing it to what the description is and making sure that things look okay. And there's a lot of UX improvements that we want to make within the Snapshot interface. And it's been kind of cool working with the Snapshot team, because we just have our own little pocket of Snapshot right now where we're just like pushing our OSnap code. And there's a lot we want to do to the transaction builder to make it more transparent what's happening. And then also, using LLMs and AI to check that the transactions match the text, or at least give an indication of there might be some ambiguity here, and like you should take another look at this.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Hi, I'm Tim. I'm actually in the stablecoin business, so probably a quick technical question about price fits of general UMA products in terms of latency, actually. So the one of the concerns when speaking with oracles is about how quick they can deliver data about this, and from centralized, decentralized exchanges, mostly centralized, obviously. So yeah, I think that's the one. Whether optimistic kind of architecture allows to get decent latency here.
Yeah, I think the architecture lets you be about as fast as it's theoretically possible to be. The main thing, though, is around having a robust enough disputer network that you feel confident that any bad proposals get caught. Because you could be there like every block, like here's the new price, and you have like while it's in the mempool, like we've got really good disputers, they're going to catch this before it goes through or something, or maybe like one block or something, like dispute by the next block or it's over. That's theoretically as fast as you can go, because you can set custom challenge windows. The big thing is, are there enough incentives? Do you feel confident enough that disputers are online and watching and accurate? And also, are you going to catch those weird edge cases of like prices appeared to move in some way that looks fake, and you need time to like analyze what that means and maybe trigger some alerts of like this market looks like it's being manipulated, or it looks like there's an API error here, or some kind of dislocation. So it's all about setting the challenge windows and bonds.
Yeah, and actually speaking of that, I'm just thinking if there is any kind of incentive system for providing this kind of verification as fast as possible, or it's like no matter if you do it, say, in a 1 hour, like say you have 4 hours to approve this, and whatever time you take, basically the output is the same. I don't know, maybe there is something to provide more incentivization for acting faster, or it's not viable. What do you think?
No, I think that it's possible. Polymarket actually gives rewards for the person who proposes, so there's an incentive to propose fast. But then there's a large bonds, there's a strong disincentive to propose incorrectly. And most of the Polymarket questions are like, who won this basketball game? Which is usually very easy to answer. Baseball questions trip up proposers sometimes because there's like a double header. and you'll have like a proposer that's like not familiar with baseball, or like you had a double header and like one of them was rescheduled from some other thing, and like somebody is like, I'm gonna get that $10 as a reward, and then they like lose a $500 bond. So like that does work. Like people built bots that they preload with answers to propose like right at the end of a game, like once it's resolvable. So you see a lot of competition around that. And I think that you could do a similar thing with disputers, but it's not just about like verifying at some point. You want to prove that you're always online. You know, like if somebody's trying to attack your protocol on Christmas Eve, because that's like, that makes the most sense to attack then, people are like offline and distracted, are bots going to show up and dispute stuff that's bad? Are they going to like call people and wake them up if they need some more help? Like prove that they're online all the time. And, you know, it's really weird that like AI got really good in the past few months, because I'm like saying stuff that sounds really weird to say, like without, where it's just like, oh, we'll use AI for this. But you could have like LLMs that are monitoring stuff that are proving that they're deliberating continuously, post that on IPFS and be like, look, I like analyzed this, and there's like 5 other AIs that are trained to act in a certain way, and we're debating each other, and here's the transcript of our debate for every single proposal that has ever happened, you know? You know, that's like a good way to prove that disputers are online. So that is something that I think would be cool to build out. I think that we are probably going to look at something like that internally, because we think it makes the Oracle 100 times better to have like all of these proven online monitors for everything.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
It could also be like a longer term fee model around UMA. Like if you want to pay for that monitoring, somebody's got to pay for the bots or something. And it's like, okay, pay like $10 a month for monitoring. Or like more if you're doing like really complex, like weird stuff that you need like custom monitors built or something. Thanks, everybody.